Welcome to this explainer. Right now, a massive foodborne illness outbreak is absolutely sweeping the nation, and it's leaving thousands of people dealing with some severe, prolonged gastrointestinal distress. Today, we're diving into a true public health whodunit. We're going to trace the path of a microscopic invader all the way from the fields where our food is grown, through the incredibly tangled web of our modern global supply chains, right down to the microscopic battles happening inside the human gut. So let's jump right in and set the stage for this investigation.
Just to wrap our heads around the gravity of the situation, we really need to look at the sheer scale of the outbreak we're dealing with here. As of mid-July 2026, health officials are tracking over 4,100 suspected infections. And the CDC? Well, they've already officially confirmed more than 1,600 of those cases, which has unfortunately resulted in at least 94 hospitalizations. Plus, this isn't just isolated to one specific region. This outbreak spans across 41 different states. The numbers are still rising, and honestly, public health officials widely acknowledge that because so many people just suffer at home without ever getting tested, the actual number of infections is likely way, way higher.
So that brings us to the most crucial question. How exactly did a microscopic parasite end up in our summer salads? It's a fascinating and, frankly, terrifying mystery. Tracking a microscopic pathogen across international borders and through global food systems is quite literally like trying to solve a highly complex crime. You've got prime suspects, false leads, changing timelines, and multiple jurisdictions all tangled together. To actually solve this, we first need to understand exactly who or what we're up against. All right, Section 1. Meet the microscopic culprit.
Our culprit here is Cyclospora chiatinensis. This is a microscopic protozoan parasite that causes an intestinal illness known as Cyclosporiasis. Now, a very defining and pretty devious trait of this specific parasite is its seasonal preference. It absolutely thrives in warm spring and summer conditions. And unfortunately for us, it's notorious for contaminating fresh produce. We're talking mostly about leafy greens like iceberg lettuce, cilantro, and basil. These are foods with lots of little ridges and crevices, which is basically the perfect hiding spot for a microscopic organism to resist getting washed away. Now, when you hear about massive stomach bug outbreaks, you probably immediately think of something like norovirus, right? The kind of thing that rapidly sweeps through cruise ships and schools. But there is a huge, crucial difference in how they transmit. If you get norovirus, you're immediately contagious to the people around you. Cyclospora is completely different. It actually doesn't spread directly from person to person. See, when an infected person sheds the parasites, those parasites are unsporulated, which means they're totally harmless at first. They literally need days or sometimes even weeks just sitting out in a warm environment to mature and become infectious. So if you get sick with this, you didn't catch it from your neighbor, you caught it directly from the contaminated source.
Moving right along to Section 2. How the parasite attacks.
Let's follow the exact timeline of this hostile microscopic takeover. When you eat that contaminated food, the parasite travels straight to your small intestine and releases these things called sporozoites. Think of them like tiny soldiers that physically penetrate and invade your enterocytes. Those are the cells lining your intestinal wall. Once they get inside, they set up camp in this protective little bubble and just start multiplying. It kicks off with a complex phase called merogamy, where they rapidly clone themselves asexually, eventually bursting out of the cells to infect neighboring ones. After that, they enter the gametogeny phase. This is a sexual reproduction cycle that creates resilient oocysts, which are then shed into the environment to start the whole wild cycle all over again.
But here is exactly why this whole life cycle makes you feel so incredibly awful. This biological process physically destroys your intestinal brush border. Your intestines are lined with these tiny finger-like projections called villi, and their whole job is to absorb water and nutrients from your food. The Cyclospora invasion severely damages those structures, literally shortening and widening the villi. And because your body suddenly cannot absorb water or nutrients, it all just flushes right through your system. That structural damage is exactly what triggers the severe, prolonged, and explosive symptoms of the illness.
Which brings us to Section 3, the supply chain mystery.
We really have to talk about the rather turbulent and confusing investigation by the FDA back in mid-July. On July 17th, a major supplier, Taylor Farms, initiated a recall of all iceberg lettuce sourced from central Mexico. The very next day, on a Saturday, the FDA announced a positive test for the parasite in that specific Mexican lettuce. But then, on Sunday, the FDA actually issued a retraction, citing a false positive due to a data review issue.
Yet somehow, by Monday, the agency was insisting that their broader supply chain investigation still pointed to Mexican facilities as the highly likely source. It has been a total whirlwind of shifting information, to say the least. And as you might expect, this back and forth has sparked some significant diplomatic and investigative friction. Looking at this neutrally, Mexico firmly disputes the FDA's claims. David Kucinich, who is the Mexican Secretary of Health, stated very plainly, so far, no evidence has been found to indicate that it originated there. Mexican authorities are actively conducting their own investigations down in the central state of Guanajuato, but they maintain that the link to their soil is, at this point, entirely unproven. So why is this public health whodunit so incredibly hard to definitively solve? Well, it really comes down to two massive hurdles. First is the incubation period. It takes 1 to 2 full weeks after eating the parasite for any symptoms to actually show up. Think about it. If you got sick today, could you accurately list every single thing you ate 10 to 14 days ago? Probably not. Second, iceberg lettuce is what we call the mixer ingredient. It's shredded into tacos, layered into burgers, tossed into side salads. By the time an outbreak is even noticed, trying to track that specific shredded lettuce back through distributors, processing plants, and international borders to one specific farm, it's like finding a needle in a global haystack.
Let's pivot to Section 4, protecting yourself from Cyclospora.
First off, you really need to know what to watch out for. The cardinal symptom here is frequent, watery, and often explosive diarrhea. But it's usually accompanied by some profound fatigue, a total loss of appetite, noticeable weight loss, and intense abdominal cramping and bloating. And here's the real kicker with this bug. If you leave it untreated, these symptoms can wax and wane. You might actually feel fine for a few days, only to have the symptoms come roaring right back. That cycle can go on for weeks or honestly, even months.
If you are dealing with these symptoms, you cannot just wait it out. You need a very specific antibiotic treatment, typically trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole. Most people know it as Bactrim. But, and this is absolutely critical to remember, routine stool tests at the doctor's office often do not screen for this specific parasite. You really have to advocate for yourself. Ask your doctor specifically to test for Cyclospora. Oh, and please, if you are sick, staying well hydrated is absolutely vital while you wait for those antibiotics to kick in.
To prevent infection in the first place, there are some really concrete steps you can take. First, immediately toss out any recalled Taylor Farms iceberg lettuce. When you buy fresh heads of lettuce, always peel off and throw away those outer layers, because that's where the parasite usually clings. Wash all your produce thoroughly under running water. And yes, I mean even the bags that swear they're already triple washed. Just keep in mind, while washing definitely helps reduce the risk, this particular parasite is remarkably resilient to standard chemical sanitizers. So, if you're in an outbreak area or you just want to be absolutely 100% sure, cooking the produce to at least 158 degrees Fahrenheit is going to kill the parasite entirely.
Let's leave off with this final thought for today. This outbreak really pulls back the curtain on the fragility of our modern food systems. I mean, we enjoy fresh produce year-round, shipped from across the continent in just a matter of days. But as our food supply chains grow increasingly global and complex, we have to ask ourselves, just how vulnerable are our daily meals to microscopic invaders? It is a serious question that demands better tracking, better testing, and way better communication. Until we get there, wash your greens, stay informed, and don't hesitate to ask your doctor the hard questions. Stay safe out there.